Recording. Chilly here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Mercury, our Venus day. Mercury is 29th degree Aquarius in the 8th house, which is a great time to talk about predictions regarding occults, occult rites, astrology, and wealth. Um, Moon is 13 degrees Libra, ruling the ascendant, Hasta Nakshatra, to do with the hands and the healing power of what we can do with our hands. Venus, 25 degrees, separating from conjunction with Deneb Algedy in Aquarius. And Jupiter has ingress to the 16 degree retrograde in Cancer. Saturn, 29 degrees Pisces. So we have Mercury, 29 degree Aquarius, ruled by Saturn in 29 degrees Pisces. That's ruled by an exalted retrograde Jupiter. This is a great time to have eurekas regarding occult, regarding astrology, and also regarding wealth and investments. J.P. Morgan Chase, the original J.P. Morgan, had Pluto in Aquarius. Before the ingress of Pluto to Aquarius, I looked at J.P. Morgan chart, which you can see on my Spirit of Matter channel on YouTube. You're going to have to scroll back because it was, of course, dealing with what everybody know that is being exposed now. So whether you see it by Epstein, whether you see it by J.P. Morgan Chase, whether you see it by Buffett, whether you see it by the media, or whether you see it as the crazy things happening in the world with genocides, democides, depopulation, and so on and so forth. Of course, shout out to Albina. And Albina talks about, Albina from Privileged View talks about the fact that whenever somebody grows or grows a business, immediately they are required to be a part of a certain system. And as a person that was beginning to cross that threshold, even back in my academic days, then I really saw, in fact, I saw it already in high school. And I talked about my JP Morgan Chase and IBM story, the tooth pasta, the tooth pasta generation. And it takes a tremendous amount of strength to say no, but it also takes the privilege to be unprivileged, which means not be born directly into elite families in the elite class. So one can have things in their bloodline or not, um, but being a little bit apart or not growing into the cream de la cream creates the ability to say no to a lot of things. If I was young and I thought we need to have FU money, one doesn't talk about being able to say, hey, okay, that thing that's going on with those systems needs to change. I don't want me, my colleagues, the younger generation, my students, my clients, or prospective students and clients and affiliates to have to do all these things, to have a job, to have a house, to have life that is actually meaningful, or rape children for the sake of the children. And this is exactly what this episode is going to be about. So, big shout out to Chris Brennan. And Chris Brennan looked at the Peterings and Secret Societies from the perspective of the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Makes a very comprehensive historical Saturn Neptune conjunction. I've been talking about Saturn Neptune for 3 whole years, and he managed to come up with new things. So that is definitely a video I would watch. I still need to watch Krasia Tasio's new video, and she has an interview regarding the Saturn Neptune. That's the one I'm recording. Leave that. Thank you. Okay, okay, you're right. Okay. Yes, thank you. Always interrupting my mama from bringing me those beautiful fruit shakes. So now when it comes to the core issues that are creating extortion codes and are basically a wealth block. Okay? It keeps people all the time under the leash of trying to do things that are negating wealth. And let's define wealth: body, heart, mind, and soul, nervous system, from the rare earth minerals to the soil to the housing to the clothing to the traveling to the birthing to the orgasm to the upbringing and on, in a way that stands the test of time. Okay? I'm not talking about success as how much of the particular agreement or corrupt talisman. Okay, I've been saying it's not a ritual abuse, it's an abusive ritual, or the corrupt talisman that some company promoted that could be called a dollar or a shekel or a Bitcoin. I'm talking about our lives and having, all the approximations, but being addicted to things and all the money going funneled back to the extortion codes. So people say, oh, then I'll run an extortion code to get the money back to me, but they're just bombarded with addictions. Okay? And the core issues, other than the cruel cloning techniques, which is in itself, okay, it's in itself something that keeps the frequency of people low so that they will be mind controlled and enslaved. There is the desensitization, and the desensitization is about basically corrupting the heart. Now, we can't make wealth without a aligned heart. We can make money. Money is one thing. Your silver is worth nothing in deflation when they change the currency to the gold standard, and you can't change silver but to, let's say, 100 ounces of gold, where one coin of silver would literally buy nothing, and you're required to buy those nothings because they already polluted your lawn. At that point, we only have humanity, and the first resource is called humanity, which is a part. This is amazing. It's those little oranges, yes. Mm-hmm. Amazing. No, 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 no. Thank you. I should have said without dates. I should have said without dates. But then my mother would say it would not come out sweet. It reminds me of the time when I was trying raw veganism, and I learned that we need to separate the sour fruits from the sweet fruits. And I didn't do it with this one. But but it's very tasty. These are the small oranges. We call them Chinese oranges. And some dates and some maple. So um, back to the desensitization, okay? We can't make wealth without the heart. A lot of the things, there's a lot of jokes about rich people right now. And all of these jokes, first of all of these jokes are true. All of these jokes are true because people grow into, and I really, really love how openly Anya Weck talked about that. People grow into being dissociated from their entire childhood. And no, thank you. It's very tasty. I'm recording. Thank you. Anyway, people grow being dissociated from their entire childhood. They did rituals where they were raped and had to rape, and they're not even aware. Um, Big shout out to Annika Lucas and Douglas McIntyre. Okay, Douglas McIntyre, I think he was only becoming a father before he found out. And I have another Facebook friend who's anonymously writing, and she's a mother. And then by the time she realized she is ritual abuse survivor, she was already a mother of two. And so she's writing about how do I even grow my children within all this chaos that I'm experiencing, and she's dealing with full-blown deed. And so it's the grand missing. Some of us are, I'm going into my Neptune Square together with some of my colleagues, and I can really see that because it's the grand missing. I grew up as a millennial. Um, okay, I grew up as a millennial. I grew up to neighborhood that had elite people living there. Um, in fact, I was living with my mom at my grandmom to be at a certain school, and basically, it's thinking back. I'm rethinking my entire life back, not only my astrology colleagues and teachers. Um, and I know I ran into astrology while it was already compounding to all the other things that I learned in life or practiced in life. So it's not like I'm an expert on astrology. It's just that astrology for me is the conglomerate of the things that I've been already doing in life expressed through astrology. Um, and in many ways, one could even see it as unfair because I'm the new eyes that look at the problem as a 9-year old and has the solution that everybody been looking for, or has the predictions that everybody been waiting for years maybe to come across it. And then there's this, rookie that didn't even study traditionally. And but this is just the nature of the fact that I run into the astrology after having studied and practiced screenwriting, filmmaking, sciences, philosophy of science, linguistics, politics, um, yes, even talismans that I thought it's too difficult to make. Okay, and then there's this astrology that's going back and forth, and I probably listed only some of the things. So of course I would be looking at astrology from a perspective that unifies many things, and I would have discoveries um, that basically how should I say that basically align with what only later, several years later, other people would be talking about, but also because of those other things. And when it comes to the desensitization rituals, those are rituals that are made to make people accept the unacceptable. And even if one wasn't in a rite, um, we were exposed to those rituals everywhere. It's in the culture, it's in the music, it's in um, the dream state, it's in many ways that are meant to make people desensitized. Now, when we are desensitized, it means that we don't follow our heart and intuition, and that we disalign the mind and the heart. And that bothers us with business. My saying no to JP Morgan Chase and IBM when they were wanting us to give the toothpaste double the whole of the toothpaste so people would waste more money patents, and I saw more to entrepreneurship than this. has compounded to something. And first of all, a lot of the people weren't as privileged. There was an attempt to have me on tape with a dog in very weird situations when I was in 13 or 14. And the two other classmates that wanted to do that probably had to do that already for those. One of them is a kindergarten teacher now. And she could be completely dissociated. And so she would be programmed to doubt the Me Too rather than to look back. And it's something that she did when, of course, she was a child. But what she was doing was nothing childlike. And those things are usually done under mind control of an adult. So shout out to Douglas McIntyre that talked about how the adults would cause the children to do that, and then they would say to the child, you did that. And then when the school found out what she wanted to do, she basically tried to make me drunk, but I didn't drink what she was supposed to give me. Then her friend let in on that they were supposed to make me drunk and have the dog doing something, which is on tape, which is something that would probably be used for extortion called for her to blackmail my family and for her to become a part of something that would allow her to have a house, to have a business in the future. Now, that treason is a practice of. And I want to give a shout out to a guy that really explains, and he talked about the desensitization. In particular, good use of the gloved hands. This is revival of wisdom. He talks about the Bohemian Grove, but this ritual is done in various ways in many other secret societies. So, because the essence of that is to get people to do things that are misaligned with their heart. Now, they get a sense of belonging, they get a sense of getting away with that, they get a sense of something that is fractured. They experience the pain of treason and compound for that by being greedy. Greedy for fame, greedy for things of the sun, greedy for lavishness. A lot of people call that new money. Okay? Because this would change the way that they spend the money. There was a great short by, I think it was a Danish or a Finnish person, and it said about what if he won the lottery. So there was him having the grocery list, and then what he would be doing is erasing the brand of coffee and buy a brand of coffee is a little bit more expensive. Okay, and so I don't remember the brand of the coffee now, um, but this is the grand difference because there's something fractured in the soul of the person. There's an energy siphoning, and then they're under control, believing they can get away, getting smug, getting even narcissistic is a fragmentation of the heart, needing to be worshipped like a god. Okay, the god, all of those are harms to the soul, harms to sun, harms to the heart. And the heart is a balance between the lower chakras, where people would be raped, and then they could only siphon energy, even though, as an astrologer, Spirit of Matter, I did astrology of celebrities, and I clearly saw the original talents of the celebrities in their natal charts. Which means that even when they siphon the energy, they do express their own talents, but they believe that they need to take it from another. And so the practice of doing those harmful things negates having a happy, healthy, safe, secure attachment, relaxed arousal relationship. And the higher chakras are intuition and discernment. I really, really love when Chris Brennan noted that the epistemic challenge of Aquarius and the desensitization rituals make discernment and clarity something that's not claircognizant and intuitive. Because the scientific endeavor, which is the astrological endeavor as well, is basically about the aligned heart. And the aligned heart is the seat of the soul that draws in. It's almost like a vacuum. It draws in, okay, all the nervous system data that is true. And when the heart is fractured, we would sometimes obsessively do science, um, trying to reach that cohesion, trying to reach the aligned heart with creating a scientific or a cosmological or even an astrological depiction of the world, yet we would always run into fragmentation, and as the grand missing is those rituals. Um, in academia, I ran into that through fraternities and sororities, and um, I wasn't in fraternities and sororities. There were people next to me that were. I was harmed when they were doing rituals, and I saw that they were dissociated, and they were doing psychic attacks as well. And so it make it. And by the way, they try to make people have everything meaning nothing. I ran into that in 207 with the Madeleine rituals and around COVID. Um, I was severely harmed around COVID, again by people that were doing those rituals, um, and this is supposed to be initiation, but it's not an initiation. Initiation is embodiment. Okay. Initiation is where my mama comes to the room and looks at the mallow plant growing, and she's like, oh my god, it gives such beauty to the room, and she can't even assess what is she feeling, but that's initiation because it's a plant teacher. Which is why I said it's not ritual abuse, it's an abuse of ritual. And indeed, it's about taking the creation and fracturing it. And even those that talk about seeing the beauty in the fracture, no, it's taking that and fracturing that as well. Um, and this is meant to keep people enslaved and in mind control, controlling their birth, not as sexual sovereignty, where we want to enjoy good orgasms, but we don't necessarily, but we're not necessarily ready to grow children yet. That's one thing, but I'm talking about controlling population to have them enslaved, which stems from a wound in itself. Okay, Pluto in Aquarius is also Pluto return for JP Morgan Chase. And um, and when we're talking about wealth creation, building things, first and foremost, we're talking about alignment. Now, I want to talk a little bit about wealth consolidation because some of my generation and a little bit younger people than me have already began to do the big things. And I go back to when I was 17 and I was in Youngpreneurs program. And we were drinking cafe at IBM that was affiliated with JP Morgan Chase. And we were groomed because they wanted us to give them the double tooth pasta, which later compounds to the subprime crisis, which later compounds to genocide in Gaza, which later compounds to war in Ukraine, which later compounds to whatever the fuck is happening with ICE, and so on and so forth. We were being groomed. They wanted us to provide crime. They wanted us to start small, think big, and increase profit in ways that negate what entrepreneurship is about. JP Morgan Chase was looking for the next Epstein. And I saw when younger people were turning Saturn return, Saturn maturation, the FTX suicide, wealth consolidation with the Buffetts. And I know it's a setup. And I know that it's not that people are just looking to increase the profit line. People usually have a vision. They usually have something creative that they want to put out there. And we were groomed. If people were hating millionaires, they were hating them for having money. Nobody actually exposed. I mean, yes, there was what people later swiped under the rug as satanic panic. Okay, I was in high school back then. No, the 1990s I was actually in school. In fact, there was an attempt to kidnap me during the satanic panic. I think so. Yeah. No, it was an attempt to kidnap me during the death or during the White March. It was around either around that or before that. It was 1992 3 probably. No, wait, no, no, no. Could have been because before fourth grade I moved, and already before that that I remember what dress I was wearing when a doctor tried to kidnap me. Um, so it was before 9, and that was around the time where I think a couple of years or during the satanic panic or whatnot, because it wasn't satanic panic, and and they do that a lot. Something being leaked, and they try to do rituals right on that time with something being leaked because they try to corrupt the energy of the exposure. Um, so And Israel is a high-tech nation, so they wanted us to go for techie things, but to have the technology classified, which prevents scientific evolution. Okay, for something to become scientific, we need to be able to observe. The role of technology is to make the unobservable observable. That's how science progresses. Light Larry Loud in the 1990s, that was my theoretical framework for my thesis. And they wanted us to be the stranglehold on the scientific revolution. And there was a lot running in through those. Uh, there was a lot. I'm not saying we were sold out on an idea. No. When I saw, for example, talked about business, okay, when it comes to protecting our ideas, saving the link. For example, when I was introducing my idea to my instructor, I sent the idea by email. Why? Because it's a record that I sent the idea with the date of that email. And by the way, erasing stuff, the missing is evidence. And I see, yeah, business is done like that. But then there is the part that wasn't told. And that's the part of the desensitization. And when it comes to the Epstein stories or the death row stories or dealer stories, those are the invalid NDAs. This is what surrounds those. Now, a lot of my generation went to wealth consolidate with that. Some of them, like the FTX, are no longer with us because of that. And I want to talk about another thing. What do we care more about? Do we care that the younger generations wouldn't have to go through what our generation did, or those of our generation that crossed the threshold did, to have a home and income, a legacy, a life, a family? Because there is a lot of, oh, I had to do that, so I want them to do that too. Now, a lot of it is because of the logic of extortion calls. But when we put it in the open so that people wouldn't have to do that, which is what I'm bringing to the surface, my response to what I've been through was what I'm talking about right now. The not talking and not this and not that and not that creates a mold around our legacies. Okay, remember, nobody remembers Pompeii. People remember the fall of Pompeii. Do we want to be the fall of Pompeii, or do we want to break the silence? The oath was an illegitimate NDA, even for people who did take the oath. Because the participation in that eventually Of course, the extortion calls are going to be looted. Of course, they are going to get at each other. You know, the Centaurians die, and then everybody fights for power. And like I said, how do you buy an Epstein Island if it's not selling? Now, but the minute if you buy the Epstein Island and you do the same as Epstein, that can be done again. Okay, there would be other prospective clients for that island. So it's a shame we have to say that in the language of real estate and rare earth minerals, but this is what the desensitization rituals do. And this is how people get disconnected with their heart and eventually disconnected with their legacy. They have to betray what is dear to them. Those are the rituals. Have you noticed how it is only with the Pluto return by sign to JP Morgan Chase that we see United States going really crazy? There was already Pluto return for United States. Why is it going down just now? Because it's Pluto return for JP Morgan Chase. Thanks, Chris Brennan, for the Saturn, Neptune, and Standard Oil. Because I've been looking at the dissolution of the monopoly, but thoroughly looking at it, Standard Oil is connected with the Saturn Neptune now. Um, because of Austin Kopek that paid attention that Russia was connected to the Saturn Neptune cycle, people like me and I call him Tom Waits, but it's not Tom Waits. The world astrology. Um, yeah, but he didn't. He thought that it's good that people don't talk about MK Ultra, and I'm like, dude, are you affiliated? But what I like about the world astrology is the very great contribution that it was when Pluto and Aries were in harmonious aspect that Hiroshima and Nagasaki fell. Um, so the outer planet cycle are really thoroughly done by the World Astrology Channel, while Chris Brennan took the Russia and Saturn Neptune to Standard Oil, and I'm like, yay. So my homage is the Pluto return of United States is actually JP Morgan Chase Pluto return. And indeed we see it around the Saturn Neptune with Saturn ruling Pluto in Aquarius. That those conversations are happening also within the astrology community. And there was the saying that maybe it was plagiarized because sexual boundary violation and plagiarism are so connected because it's not about the rape, it's about siphoning the energy. They need the violence to bring the energy to a place where they try to vacuum the living into something that they try to bind or something. Um, and this is where um, this is basically where we see the astrology part because just as we schedule, if I dig my half moons, I schedule it by the astrology to dig a half moon at the half moon. If they try to ritually rape, electrocute, and clone a person, they also do it using astrological elections. And this is how the astrology and the occult got affiliated with those echelons, because the practice of the entire scientific endeavor, including astrology, and another contribution of Brennan is the mathematikoi, because mathematician was astrologer. We studied astronomy to understand astrology, because solar eclipses could tell us when would kings be in risk of being overthrown. And so that funded the scientists to develop the technology. Why did the Medici erect the Pope but funded Galileo at the same time? Because Galileo showed us when can we computate an eclipse, which means Galileo would show us if the Medicis would turn out to be kings, messengers of God and whatnot. It is Galileo who would tell us when is the king at risk more than the Pope, unless the Pope studied astrology. But Galileo made it a science, and um, okay, he didn't invent astrology. It was astrology also in Babylonian times, um, but it was important for anybody that was prospecting to be king to erect an astrologer. And to have astrology, we needed to watch the stars, we needed to computate their trajectory, we needed to challenge preconceived religious notions. And for the monarchy, it would be challenging. The monarchy would usually be, at least the Medici's case, were the first time that they were coming to be almost kings through being a change, okay, counter. And they knew that it's an ancient knowledge that the king could be overthrown at an eclipse, at a solar eclipse. They wanted somebody that can computate that, and if it meant that the sun is moving around, that the earth is moving around the sun and not the sun around the earth, as per the Medicis that wanted to be kings, that's important, because the money time is when Galileo says it, rather than when the Pope says it, that they need to try to build that dummy to take the blame of, of the king. This is also why a lot of people say that the elite worships the black sun. They know that solar eclipses could overthrow leaders, and they're affiliated with the monarchy. So, of course, they try to study that. Now, if we can look at the monarchy and the fractured heart. Now, if what is the one thing that changes everything is understanding that initiation is embodiment. Empathy is not an enemy, because It was alignment with the heart, even though I could barely feel when I was in high school, like many people. Um, it was alignment with the heart that I didn't follow JP Morgan Chase. I didn't appease what the investment company was willing to invest in. And they were willing to invest a lot. Okay? The Dutch chocolate at IBM, that was not, we weren't taken to those buildings and those meeting rooms over nothing. They wanted us to sit at those tables, but that's what they wanted us to do and follow things. It was an act of alignment with the heart that put me in a position with all the suffering and that I went through. There are many people that was going through my suffering and more and did not even sustain Saturn return and Saturn maturation because they appeased the JP Morgans. Okay, the suicide of the FTX guy. It was my generation. I think it was even my age. Or younger. I think it was either his Saturn return or Saturn maturation. JP Morgan groomed him to set him up to kill himself. JP Morgan grew. Watch the Spirit of Matter episode where I talk about it. Scroll back and watch. I think it would be in 2023. 2022 or 2023 when I talk about that. I know that grooming. And to say no to that meant to say no to JP Morgan Chase, forget even IBM and all they have to offer. And if you think that was the grooming, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. The dream state since infants. They were trying to point at the eros of the baby. Lada Duncheva addressed it. She said, I used to self-pleasure around horrible things happening to women. It's a part of the programming that we were supposed to engage in because as business women we were supposed to part ways with to rub shoulders with the Ghislaine Maxwells and the Epsteins. We were when I say we were supposed to be in the table, that's the table. So Lada worked at only, and this is going all the way to the self-pleasure, only even practicing self-pleasure with the alignment of what? The heart. Lada sustained. And again, to the degree, I don't know the entire thing, but to the degree that a person could align with the heart is that person sustained. Gracia Tasius lives in Bulgaria where people come to see Sirius. It's a very spiritual country. I'm only beginning to relearn. Remember when I was there, um, it was we traveled in 2007 during the Madeleine ritual, and my soul was completely, it affected me very horribly. And I remember we traveled from Sofia to Varna during the snow, and it was so beautiful. It's beauty that you cannot even There's something in the spirit of the place. And then the tomato plants are ruined by the chemtrails. Tomato, when we had 7th October, 2 weeks I was not at the property that I rented. Okay, that later I had to run from. Everybody knows what. It's next to the Dead Sea. So when I came back, almost the only crop growing, except for the rosemary, was tomatoes. Okay, the cherry tomatoes. So if the tomatoes in Bulgaria are not growing, where everybody comes to see Syrians are not growing because of the chemtrails, it's not a conspiracy. having to build, having to actually build a structure to grow crops within, that's not something caused it in the air. Now, a lot of the Neptune Square is meeting the reality of the basically the business idols. Okay, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett cared to understand what he is invested in. He was invested with Epstein. Now, a lot of I may even know and people that have a business that I was a client to that could have well consolidated and probably learned that afterwards. Now, here is the thing: those negotiations are usually done in secret, so nobody could have warned them, and the information usually leaks afterwards. Neptune transits or Neptune, some Pluto, but also Neptune, or with the Saturn Neptune, we get to meet our idols, and sometimes we get to hold accountable our idols. When it comes to big wealth, the Saturn Neptune is sextiling Mula Nakshatra. That is the end of Sagittarius, beginning of Capricorn. Um, when it comes to energy, because wealth is energy. Each and every person, if we have a root chakra and soul star chakra and earth star chakra, it means we have from the rare earth minerals to basically the connection to the all that is, we have a body, a territory, and that territory might not be one place. Okay, we're not necessarily a tree, but we definitely have. Okay, also when it comes to astrocartography, weird example, but true example, Donald Trump's Rahu astrocartography line is in exactly the spot in Greenland where he placed the military bases. Exactly. Now it's a 22 Rahu. So for me, it's scary to see. But this is punktlich there, astrocartographically. So when I say something regarding that, there's an essence of truth to that. But if we meet that place misaligned, okay? And so those rituals that are done to children, they're done to make the children believe that the wealth is given to them from somebody else through extortion and blackmail. Okay? Even stuff like the Me Too or those things are done to siphon energy, which is why plagiarism and sexual harassment usually go hand in hand. Now, as an astrologer, I tell you, I saw charts of celebrities or public figures. I saw in the natal chart that they were what they were doing with whoever they stole energy or siphoned energy from, they were expressing their natal chart. So those all of those rituals that are done are basically futile because essentially they were meant to express their natal chart and they express their natal chart. Okay? They could not have identified with others what they don't have innately within themselves. But even more than that, their natal chart is the natal chart. If I take a look at chart of Jean-Claude Van Damme, let's say, wait a second, because I knew him from Hard Target, but as watching the movie, I did not know him personally, but I said, wait a second, this man is also a good dramatic actor. And then after I do the episode, I see that he had dramatic roles in movies, and I see the movies, and it's like, oh my God, it's in the natal chart. Which is why the answer is not about saying, oh, I rather not have the money or this. No, it's not about the money because that money is your energy. Money is one thing, but that is your life. That is what you do with your energy. And you need to have the energy to do something with that energy. And that energy is yours, it's your life energy. That's